Hey everyone, I'm DarkRio27, on and off world record holder for Kirby and the Forgotten Land any percent. I'm making this guide to show off strats and movement for the any percent route. I'm going to share any tips and tricks I have, and basically just explain what's going through my head when I do runs. If there are other notable routes, I'll try to mention them or show them off, but for the most part I'm going to be focusing on my own movement. To start off, I'll show you the button mapping I use for my controller. I just use a Pro controller. Keep in mind that I use type A controls, so A is jump and B is inhale or attack. I like to map ZL to B, and I really only use that for the truck B section and sometimes the car B section, because I can just hold that down and then jump freely with my right thumb. I map minus to another trigger, in my case ZR, because it's easier to mash when I want to drop an ability or mouthful mode. And I also map plus to my Y button and vice versa for the same idea. It's much easier for me to mash the Y button quickly to skip all the cutscenes than it is to mash the plus button. If I mention a button in the video, it's just going to be the normal button, not the remapped version. So if I say press minus, it's just whatever button you have mapped to minus. To start off, the main powerless movement in this game is slide hopping. You slide by holding R and then pressing A. After you start sliding, if you let go of R, then you can press A again to jump out of the slide. Doing this avoids the slow ending animation of the slide. Optimally, you want to jump right as the slide starts to slow down. You also want to do the shortest jump you can, so you can start sliding again as soon as possible. Sometimes the spacing of the level won't allow you to do optimal slides, so you might need to do shorter or longer slides depending on the area. While on the topic of slide hopping, let's talk about jumping. Something noteworthy about jumping in this game is that if you press A while in the air, Kirby will actually snap to the ground and then jump if he's close enough to it. This is a really useful mechanic that can make climbing stairs and other ledges faster, and also makes platforming a bit easier. However, shield inputs will not work while you're in the air. This means that if you're holding R and you press jump before you touch the ground, Kirby will do another jump instead of doing a slide. This can be really frustrating early on, especially if you press A again and then start floating. Slide hopping takes some practice to get used to the timing, but if you find that you're jumping a lot, just delay your A presses until you're absolutely sure you're on the ground. Something really annoying about slide hopping is that slides in this game really love to home into enemies and other objects, so you might not be able to slide in certain spots, or have to take an angle you don't want to avoid homing into an enemy. If possible, try to slide down hills and jump up them. If you jump while you're going up the hill, the ground will rise to meet you and you can slide again sooner. But if you jump when going downhill, the ground goes away from you and it takes longer before you can do another slide. Two other basic movement abilities are dodge rolling and floating. To dodge roll, just hold R and then tap a direction on the control stick. You want to hold that direction so that Kirby gets the maximum distance out of the roll. This doesn't come into play very often, but we do use the occasional dodge roll here and there. If you dodge roll when an attack is coming toward you, the game will go into bullet time mode, which you generally want to avoid since it slows everything down. If you dodge roll near a ledge that's not too tall, Kirby will jump higher than normal to get up on top of it. This can occasionally be helpful to climb stairs faster. Something to note about floating is that the faster you mash A, the faster you will rise, but it will not affect your horizontal speed at all. You also can't exhale immediately after pressing A, so if you get your B inputs eaten, that's probably why. You have to stop mashing A for a few frames before you can exhale. How high you can float is determined by Kirby's height cap, which I'm not going to go into detail about here, but I will link a video in the description that explains it in depth. You probably know that time starts when you select your difficulty. You want to select Spring Breeze for any percent, because if you do wild mode you get extra coins at the end of each level, which wastes time. When I'm mashing plus to skip cutscenes, I keep an eye on the lower right corner, and then when I see the skip text bulge a little bit, that's when I know I can stop mashing. Otherwise, if you overmash, you'll pause during the gameplay and waste time. To start off, I do a few slides about optimal length, maybe a little bit shorter, and then when I jump up here I do two really short slides. The game actually lags when you cross in front of this rock here, and it can eat your shield input. If you ever notice that you get a jump in that spot instead of a slide, that's probably why. In order to counteract that, I want to get my slide out before the lag happens so that there are no inputs to get eaten. Then I do a couple long slides across this bridge and across this area here so I can go straight up. It's important that you point the control stick directly up, or maybe even a bit up left, because if you press up right at all, Kirby's going to home into the star block or the Woofy. Here I do a few short slides to try to jump up the hills and slide across the flat areas. Then I can do optimal slide hops from here. If I land on top of this dandelion, I know my spacing is going to be good, and then I try to land on the corner of these stairs here and slide down them. Some more optimal sliding, and then I just try to float and jump up these stairs as quickly as possible. I do a big jump onto this ladder and then 2 more jumps. Make sure not to slide near this Poppy Bros Jr. until you're above it, so Kirby doesn't home into it. The fastest movement is to jump across this gap and land on the bridge without hitting the bomb, but if that's too difficult, you could just inhale the bomb or go around. If you do it that way, you'll need to turn off auto swallow first so you can spit out the bomb. When I get near this Kabu, I do a dodge roll to avoid homing into it with a slide. You can hold B while skipping this cutscene, you don't need to worry about trying to time your B press. With the car, it's important to know that jumping while turning seems to help you lose less speed, and you can jump off of downward slopes to preserve momentum. You can also jump up hills to spend the least amount of time driving on an upward slope. Right there, I jumped off of that large hill and the small one to try to preserve my momentum. I want to keep jumping so I can keep that momentum as far as possible. It probably doesn't last all the way to the end of the section, but I don't really know when I lose the momentum, so I just keep jumping anyway. There's no reason not to. For some reason, the game keeps trying to get you to hold Y to drop everything, but instead of doing that, you can just press minus to instantly discard any mouthful mode or ability. In this arena, you want to try to kill every Woofy on spawn. You can spit out an Woofy pretty early and still be able to hit the next one that's spawning. Now's a good time to mention that when I end a level or when there's text, I mash both A and B to get through it. Both buttons allow you to skip dialogue, so mashing both of them allows you to skip it even faster. Personally, I just mash the A button with my right thumb, and then I bring my left thumb over the B button and kind of vibrate my controller into it. Make sure not to start moving until you completely finish skipping the cutscene for the overworld. You can hold L and tilt the control stick to move faster on the overworld, but if you do either of those things before the cutscene is fully skipped, the game might lock you in place and it won't let you move until you completely release the control stick. In 1-1, you want to start off with a couple longer slides, but after that, just do optimal length slide hops. Once again, it's important to hold straight up here or you'll home into the star block. And then when I get to this slide, I jump out of it really early since it's very likely to home in on the Rabaroo, and you don't actually want to hit the Rabaroo with your slide or you'll bounce off and lose time. When you get to this section of the tree here, you either have to run up slightly to the top section or run around to the right a little bit in order to make this jump. Then I just try to slide to the right as quickly as possible before the Woofy hits me. And for this Buffahorn, I just slide straight at it and then go to the right around it. I do a little dodge roll off this ledge, but I'm not sure if that actually saves time. And then if you do a dodge roll right near this rock, Kirby will get a massive amount of distance. Just be careful not to slide off the edge onto the rock or the game likes to eat your dodge roll. Here I do a bunch of pretty short slide hops because I want to get in one extra slide before jumping onto the ladder. This fight, it doesn't really matter whether you inhale the Woofy or the Rabaroo. Now's the time I like to turn off auto swallow just because it's easy to remember. If you prefer type B controls, make sure to switch to those while turning off auto swallow. It doesn't matter where in the run you turn it off as long as you do it before inhaling Wild Edge. I stand near Wild Edge so they'll attack, and then after they grab their sword, I run out of the way and stand near where the stars will spawn. After getting both stars in my mouth, I wait for 1 second and then run above them so that the shield is facing the direction I want. This will cause 2 more stars to spawn, which I can inhale immediately and spit out to finish off Wild Edge. Then I dodge roll to the Waddle Dee. If you only manage to get one star during the first attack, just spit it at Wild Edge immediately and then grab the other star and proceed as normal. You don't even lose any time if you do that. For this area, you just try to hold as straight up as you can and then do optimal length slide hops. Make sure not to jump off this dumpster until you're touching the wall behind it, or you'll get caught on the corner of the ledge above. I dodge roll up these stairs since there's not really enough room to slide on them, and then get in another slide here. Be careful not to get too close to that buffalo horn before sliding, or you'll home into it. I like to fit in 2 quick slides before inhaling this cone, but I don't know if it's actually better than just doing one normal slide. I do Turtle Skip, which is the hardest and fastest version of Turtle Skip. There are basically 3 known versions. I'm not going to go into detail about them here, but I do have a video that I can link in the description if you want to know more about that. If you're just learning this game, I would suggest going for Turtle Skip Skip. It's much easier than Turtle Skip and only a couple seconds slower. The short version of Turtle Skip is that I damage boost off the turtle's head, and then I have 1 frame where I can jump in midair. Then I delay my B press a little bit to try and insta-kill the turtle. If you don't press B at the right time, you'll just land on top of the tilting and then you can attack it again, which is totally fine, but it loses about 1.5 seconds. I'm going to take this opportunity to explain how fire works in general. If you're on the ground or in the air and not really touching the control stick, you can tap or hold B to do a breath attack. You can hold this attack as long as you want, change direction slowly while using it, or even move around while facing the same direction if you hold R. More importantly, fire has a dash attack that's significantly faster than slide hopping. If you press B in the air while holding a direction on the control stick, Kirby will do a fire dash. You can do any number of fire dashes in a row as long as you're in the air the whole time. You can also press A and B at the exact same time to do a fire dash on the ground. I will be calling this technique a grounded dash or a grounded fire dash. You can do it in the water as well, but I'll still just call it a grounded dash. Keep in mind though that there's a short period after using a fire dash where pressing A will just make you float even if you're on the ground. This means you have to wait almost half a second before doing another slide or a jump or even a grounded fire dash. The optimal movement with fire is to do really short slide hops into jumps and then do as many fire dashes as possible. On a flat surface you can only get 2 fire dashes per jump. If you start the first dash just before the peak of your jump, you can still get both off. If you press B at any point during a fire dash, Kirby will try to do another fire dash afterwards, which can be a little frustrating when you're first learning how to use fire, but it can be used to your advantage. If you try to press B at the end of one fire dash to do another one, but Kirby registers as being on the ground, he'll just do fire breath instead of doing a dash, which wastes time. However, if you press B at the beginning of the previous fire dash, Kirby will not do the breath attack. This means that if you always press B at the beginning of the previous fire dash, Kirby will never spit fire, which means even if you touch the ground, you can jump or keep moving immediately without wasting any time. Personally, whenever I'm doing 2 fire dashes, I just double tap B and the buffered input allows both fire dashes to happen. Whenever I'm chaining 3 or more fire dashes together, I just press B at the beginning of the previous dash instead of the end. Also, Kirby won't change direction mid-fire dash, so you have the entirety of the current dash to change the control stick to the exact angle you want for the next one. When using fire, it's best not to destroy anything that you don't have to. Any enemies, star blocks, or other obstacles that you plow through will generate hit lag, which slows the game down. You do have to keep in mind that the fire dash's hitbox is enormous, so it can be pretty difficult, if not impossible, to avoid some obstacles. This is really important when using the fire dash near boulders or large enemies or anything else that will cause you to bonk. If you don't give those objects a wide enough berth, you'll run into them and they'll knock you out of your fire dash and you'll bounce backwards. Gordos are particularly problematic in this aspect. If you try to jump and fire dash over most Gordos, you'll just end up bonking on thin air. Make sure to give all Gordos a wide berth when using the fire dash. It's pretty often that these sorts of obstacles appear in cycle-based rooms, so if you do hit one of them, you can miss your cycle and lose a lot of time. I always try to memorize exactly how many fire dashes I want per jump and the approximate angles of each dash. That way I hopefully don't have to improvise any movement on the fly. In each level, I'll try to walk you through everything you need to know to space your fire dashes correctly and always end up in the spot you want to be. So now that I've explained how fire works, let's actually grab it in this stage. I do 3 short slides and then jump as high as I can before inhaling fire so that I have enough height to do 2 fire dashes. This puts me in the perfect position to slide hop onto the ladder and squeeze under the bouncy. Then you can fit in 6 fire dashes here. This is a good place to practice pressing B at the start of the previous fire dash instead of the end of it. Be careful not to start a fire dash right in front of this dome so you don't inhale it. Then I just do a bunch of double fire dashes through this section. For this part, I slide to the edge, do 1 fire dash to this pillar, and then do a jump and 2 more fire dashes into the door. For the first half of this area, you don't have to go very fast, you're just making a cycle and you need to wait for it anyway. I like to not slide too much here because you can home into certain enemies. Then when I get to this spot, I wait, jump as soon as I can make it to the next platform, float, and then do a fire dash in midair. If you're right next to the ground, the game will often let you do a fire dash without making you bonk on the wall. I don't slide here because I find it easier to dodge the hothead's fire when walking, because sometimes it's able to hit you. Here I do 3 fire dashes. Right there I like to do 1 dash up left and then 1 dash forward, but if you want to just do both dashes at a more moderate angle, that's fine too. And right here I do really long slides because I want to get the max distance possible so I can barely make it to this ledge. Then I do another fire dash trying not to hit any of the enemies and cause hit lag. Then I go way around this deckaboo because remember, fire has a giant hitbox. When I get to the top of these stairs, I delay my first fire dash a bit so that I can hit the poster with it. The sooner I hit the poster, the sooner the mission will pop up, and something to note about those pop-ups is that you can't load the next room while one's on screen. What that means in this case is that as long as you get into the loading screen before the mission goes away, you haven't lost any time. It's important to hit the poster as soon as possible, but then you don't have to kill yourself to save every frame in the movement afterwards. In Rocky Rolling Road, I start off with a bunch of slides into single fire dashes. This movement is very important since it will allow you to make certain cycles with the boulders in the upcoming section. I go way around this jab hog to avoid the spikes. Then you want to grab one of the snacks on this level, because if you reveal every hidden objective in a level, you won't have one unlock at the end result screen. This saves about 1.5 seconds if you can do it. Here's where it's really important to keep fire's giant hitbox in mind. You may have to go far around these boulders or wait to use a fire dash so that you don't bonk into them. I make sure to do a couple of long slides right here so that I don't land on that rock and have it eat my fire dash. Because remember, if I land on the ground when trying to use a fire dash, I'll just get fire breath instead. You can push slightly against walls with fire without bonking, just make sure not to take too extreme of an angle. Then as you jump off this ladder, make sure to hold hard left on the control stick. If you hold up left at all, you're going to bonk into those rocks that are sitting there. I like to weave in and out of the boulders, but if you want to just go around to the left side, that's fine too. Here I use 1 grounded fire and then slide into the secret passage and jump and fire out. You don't need a super long slide to trigger the objective, you just need the camera to start moving to the right and you'll know that you've gotten it. Now if you're fast enough, you can get under this boulder easily. But if you're a little bit slow, I'd recommend doing a single fire here so that you're closer to the ground and don't hit the boulder midair. Then if you're even slower, unfortunately you'll just have to wait for the boulder, there's no getting around it. Do 4 fire dashes here and then slide in another 4 and then 3 more afterwards. Now obviously you don't want to fall off the edge with the car, but it's really important that you don't here because you get a Waddle Dee for not falling off. To be honest, I'm not sure what the best movement through this section is. I just go straight up and then try to carry the momentum from this hill for a little bit. Then you can jump up this hill to spend the least amount of time driving uphill. As I jump off the ground here, I turn to the left a little bit to help avoid bonking as I do another jump to the cage. In Alivel Mall, I start with a bunch of slide hops into single fires since it helps with the spacing at the beginning here. I want to make sure I'm on the escalator before sliding here so I don't home into the woofy. Here I jump off the edge of the couch and do 3 fires, making sure to get over the railing. Then I just do a bunch of slide hops into double fires, trying to avoid the enemies and obstacles to reduce hit lag. For the most part, the only thing that matters with the invincibility candy is getting it as soon as possible, so I do a couple single fire dashes so I can dash onto the candy. Now it doesn't really matter how long it takes to get to the door, since the mission pop-up will be on screen anyways. You do want to take the invincibility as far as possible, so do actually go fast here. It's just not a big deal if you accidentally bonk or something. Now the invincibility candy basically gives you a speed buff, and the optimal movement is sliding into single fires. You want to slide for the same amount of time you would in optimal slide hopping if you didn't have fire. The fire dash is not affected by the speed boost, so you want to slide a lot more than you normally would, especially on conveyors. You can take out Wild Frosty faster if you contact him with your body and use fire breath at the same time. Then you can start up a fire dash and his body should be destroyed by contact damage. Personally, I fire dash onto this railing here. Then I slide forward and jump once I'm past this vertical support. That lets me know I'll have just enough distance to make it across this gap. For most people, I would just recommend going around instead of trying to dash over the gap. It's not really that much slower. I slide past this a woofie because I need to be really close to the wall and do a max height jump in order to make it across this gap with 2 fire dashes. Then I take a slight downwards angle because I don't want to run face first into this Sir Kibble's blade. I do a long slide and then 4 fire dashes here to get past the Bronto Burts. I don't want to accidentally slide into the first one. Here I do a grounded fire upright and then jump onto these garbage cans, which gives me just enough height to do 2 more fire dashes. If you're touching the bottom wall, the loading zone may not activate for some reason, so try not to hold downwards at all here. Here I do 1 long slide and a couple big jumps. You can't really slide on the railing because you'll home into the enemies, so I just jump into fire dashes. I like to rotate my control stick with my right palm while I rotate the controller with my left hand. You can actually press multiple buttons to spit out locker mouth, along with a few other mouthful modes, so I like to mash A or B instead of minus. So I wouldn't recommend doing the Gorimondo strat that I do unless you're going for basically world record, because it's very RNG dependent and also quite difficult. First off, I do a couple long slides because I don't want my fire dash to end right in front of this woofie. I'll show the method I do first, but then I'll show the much more consistent method afterwards. So for this strat, you actually won't need any ability. So you want to keep fire for movement, but then make sure to discard it before you get into the cutscene, or the game won't let you drop your ability. You do actually have to pick up this soda cup, it's part of the strategy. Like many other bosses in this game, Gorimondo will do a different attack depending on how close you are to him. If you're far away, he'll throw rocks. If you're closer, he can slap at you, and if you're really close, he'll stomp. I want him to slap, so I mash B to spit the cup out and then immediately do a dodge roll and a slide forward to get a consistent distance from him. I need 2 slaps and a grab for this strategy to work. Unfortunately, Gorimondo can randomly decide not to do any or all of his slap/grab attacks, so you are at the mercy of RNG with this strat. As he does his first slap, I move about 2 steps to the right, maybe a little more. For me, he always slaps with his left arm first, so I move to the right, but if he slaps with his right arm, then move to the left. I shield so I don't get knocked away. Then I jump to the left to get a triple star and do a slide hop to get a double star. This is probably the hardest part, and your spacing needs to be pretty specific, which is why you have to walk a certain distance before shielding. Getting the triple star in particular is difficult, but the best advice I can give is to just believe the stars will be where they need to be. If you try to react to where the stars spawn, you'll be too late and won't be able to get a triple. Now you're going to do the exact same thing in the opposite direction, but make sure to hold on to the double star instead of spitting it at Gorimondo. As you inhale the last double star, pull back a little towards Gorimondo to make sure you're still in grab range. If you're too far away from Gorimondo, he'll just jump away even if you get the right RNG. This last part is pretty difficult as well, but you only have to do it once. Gorimondo will start to grab at you with his right hand, so start walking to the left and slightly up. You want to be walking slightly towards Gorimondo since this will make him move back some as he grabs, causing the stars to spawn closer together. Jump over his arm, make sure you wait until all 4 stars spawn, and then hit him with a double star, which will cause him to go into phase 2. Personally, I rotate the control stick in almost a full circle, starting up and rotating counterclockwise, which puts me at a good position and angle to jump and inhale all 4 stars. Finally, you can run under Gorimondo's legs if you want that extra Waddle Dee, and then you have to wait for his shield to wear off before hitting him with the quad star and finishing him off. His shield doesn't wear off until after he's done pounding his chest, but it's not immediately after. I usually wait for him to start preparing to jump before I hit him with the quad star. To use ice on Gorimondo, which is what I would recommend, I'll need to introduce you to the ice tech. I'll go over this more in World 2, but the basics are that you have to hold shield, hold the control stick in any direction even if it's just barely, and tap B when your shield comes up. You can practice the rhythm for tapping B, but it won't matter too much against Gorimondo since he's going to lag the game. All you have to do for Ice Gorimondo is slide hop over to him and start using the ice tech as soon as possible. Because Gorimondo lags the game, you'll need to tap B slower than you would normally. Keep in mind that your ice shield needs to come up before you should tap B again. Something you can do to reduce lag here is point the camera downwards away from Gorimondo. Doing this is pretty awkward on most controllers, but I was able to accomplish it by using my thumb to push the right stick downwards while I use my index finger to tap B. Make sure you're always pointing at a leg that's on the ground so you can actually hit Gorimondo. If you're able to do the ice tech quickly enough, you can take him out before he stomps even once, but if you're too slow, you may have to shield or jump over the shockwave that appears. After you've beaten Gorimondo, it's time to move on to World 2.